Ricky's favorite month of the year was in full swing. He'd been racking his brain for the penultimate trick to top off his final year of trick-or-treating. Mr. Withers was going to get it one more time, and he was going to get it good if Ricky had anything to do with it. He nearly bubbled over with excitement every time an idea came to mind, but nothing seemed right just yet. He was going to hit Mr. Get-Away-From-My-Lawn's house so hard the neighborhood would still be talking about it when he went off to college. It didn't even matter to Ricky if his parents grounded him until then. He was dead set on it, and nothing was going to stop him. He was small for his age, but his ability to outwit sixth graders, some adults as well, and come up with creative pranks put him at the top of the food chain in his fifth grade class. Kids listened to him, and you could even say they feared him. His teacher, Mrs. Viskel, often remarked to her colleagues, "I see a bright future in politics for that one." Less than 3 months into the school year, and he had already brought her to tears twice. She was strongly considering retirement next year. Last October, the grumpy old man had gotten a reprieve because Paul Clark had forgotten to extinguish the candle in his jack-o'-lantern the year before. Ricky shamed Paul at school the next day for screwing up his trick and sent him to eat lunch alone for the rest of the week. The next year, he reminded Paul of his screw-up and made him sit elsewhere for the entire month of October. One day, while Ricky was pulling rusty nails out of an old 2x4 to hammer into one of Mr. Withers' car tires, the perfect trick just popped into his head. Actually, it was 2 tricks. While he enacted the prank at hand, he thought through the details of his ultimate Halloween trick. It involved a maneuver he'd learned about in history class called a feint. Halloween was fast approaching, and he needed everyone on board if his plan was going to work. So he forgave Paul for his past mistake. The kid had been punished enough, and Ricky figured getting him out of the doghouse would make him more amenable to a special task that he had for him. There was no way Ricky was going to let Old Man Withers off the hook this year. No way in hell. Gerald would have bought a DIY surveillance system years ago if he'd known they'd become so inexpensive. It paid for itself just 2 days after he installed it. The footage of Ricky sneaking into his house through the back door while he sat on the front porch set him to boiling. He could barely keep from rushing down the street to confront the kid with the proof of his crime, and he held himself in check as he scrutinized every second of the eye-opening video. Gerald watched the footage of the kid slinking through the kitchen, poking pinholes in various packages of food. He now knew why his bread always got stale so quickly, and why freezer burn was so prevalent amongst his steaks and burger patties. Witnessing the kid shake what appeared to be an empty jar over his basket of fruit and vegetables suddenly solved the fruit fly mystery he'd been scratching his head over for so long. The old man paced back and forth in front of the monitor, growing angrier and angrier as every little inconvenience of his life was proven to be the work of a mischievous brat that was just entering the beginning stages of puberty. He decided to wait until he caught him on camera enacting his plan. He figured the kid would strike on Halloween. Then he'd take the damning evidence over to the police station the next morning and put an end to the delinquent's tricks once and for all. He rushed out of his house to buy more cameras so he could cover every room. Ricky had gotten sloppy a couple of weeks back, leaving a handprint on the back door window that Gerald noticed was too small to be his own. and that's how easily he lost the upper hand. Disney princesses, pirates, zombies, vampires, goblins, space aliens, and all sorts of other colorful, attired characters danced through the neighborhood. Ricky was the exception in his no-frills ghost costume. He had cut a slit in the back so he could easily slip the top down to show everyone that he was also on the hunt for candy. Once he had made his presence known and gathered enough candy to complete his alibi, he quietly slipped into the woods to meet with Paul. Just as Ricky had predicted, Paul was willing to skip the first hour or so of candy gathering if it redeemed him in the eyes of his friends. Being shunned last October had seriously injured his self-esteem, to the point that he would have done just about anything to get back in the good graces of his group of friends. He didn't go trick-or-treating last year because no one wanted him around. So, he wouldn't be missing this year. He quickly donned Ricky's white sheet, repeated his instructions, and rushed off to trick-or-treat with his friends instead. Ricky, dressed all in black, rushed off to scope out the old man's house and wait for the signal. It had taken a lot of painstaking effort to find the 5 well-hidden beauties that were going to do most of the work this year. Their globular black and red abdomens reflected in Ricky's eyes as he inspected them, one by one, in their glass prisons. He made sure the lid was tightly closed, and then slipped the jar back into his backpack. He quietly came up from the backyard, snuck along the side of the house, and peeked around the corner. The old man was sitting on his porch, in the dark like a trapdoor spider, waiting for some unsuspecting prey to come near his entrance. The tip of his cigar came to life for one fiery second, illuminating the permanent scowl on his face, and then faded. He exhaled a cloud of smoke as he stared out at all the children going door to door, while their parents followed along on the sidewalk at their own pace. A flicker of movement in the corner of the old man's eye brought a wicked smile to his face as Ricky slipped out of sight and headed towards the back door. He tightly clenched his cane in both hands and considered going inside to catch him in the act. He decided to stick to his plan, though. As far as he was concerned, the movie he was making exposed the whole neighborhood and made a great argument for doing away with all the New Age idiocracies in favor of more traditional styles of living. He figured it was worth missing out on cracking a kid's head open with the metal tip of his walking stick. It actually pleased the old man to have just one target to focus on. He could strike at everyone and everything he despised with a short trip to the police station. He was convinced that the kid was responsible for every little aggravation he'd endured the last few years. Actually, his feeble, bitter, and irrational old mind blamed Ricky for every bad thing that had ever happened to him. That really wasn't anything new, though. Mr. Kramer's view was that children had been there at every point in his life to frustrate, antagonize, and shame him. He now had what he hoped was a way to quell all the unquiet ghosts in his head. A loud crack sounded off the side of his house. Gerald posted off his cane and rose to his feet as an egg exploded against the porch railing and scattered bits of yolk and shell over his pants. The old man reached down deep into himself and pulled forth a strength none of the hoodlums expected. He rushed to the steps, shouting every nasty epithet he knew, and bounded down them much quicker than anyone expected. effectively clipping their assault and sending kids fleeing in every direction. Ricky had told them that they'd have nearly a minute for their strike from the sidewalk, because it took a little over 2 minutes for the feeble old man to get to and from his mailbox. He hadn't taken into account what an adrenaline-fueled rage could accomplish, even in such a feeble old man. The kid that was supposed to climb the side rail of the porch and knock on the front door chickened out and ran. Ricky's assault plan was floundering. He was so sure it would go off without a hitch that he hadn't accounted for a shorter account of time to accomplish his secret task inside. Mr. Withers looked 10 times more frightening than Tammy Swanson had ever seen him look before. The enraged Mr. Withers was on her before she could do more than turn and run. His cane took her behind the knee and then quickly cracked across her ass as she toppled to her knees. He raised the cane up as high as he could to bring it down on her backside again, but his left leg buckled beneath him. He managed to stay upright, but the chubby preteen had crawled to the sidewalk and gotten to her feet by the time he'd steadied himself. She crouched there, tangled in her mummy bandages, looking as pathetic as a cow caught in a barbed wire fence. Wiping tears from her eyes, she looked at the tip of his cane as he brought it down on one of her bandages that lay at his feet. He relinquished the bit of her costume just as she grabbed it and yanked as hard as she could. He went head over heels backwards and toppled onto the lawn. Mr. Withers covered the distance between them and came to a stop before her, just as she rose to her hands and knees. She began to bawl her eyes out as his shadow completely engulfed her shivering form. Later, she would convince herself it was just her imagination messing with her head, but at that moment, his shadow cast over her seemed darker than her room at bedtime. She had given up all pretense of getting away. The old man snorted like a pig and delivered a line she would repeat to her shrink years later. "Back to your wallow, little pig." He continued to snort and squeal as he turned and hobbled back to his porch, leaning heavily on his cane. All the rage-fueled strength had drained out of him, and he was just an old man again. By the time he flopped heavily into his chair, Tammy was nowhere to be seen, and the street was empty. He laughed aloud at the realization that it was him that had sent kids and adults alike scurrying off to some quieter part of the neighborhood. Only Mr. Withers could openly beat a child and get off without further altercation. He rested his head against the back of his chair and muttered it was good to be the king. He lit a cigar and gave it a few puffs to get it burning brightly. Just then, a scream, followed by the sound of shattering glass, came from inside the house. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel, so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so you won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do, and it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.